Hello and welcome once again to Learning Music with Pat. Today I thought I would talk to you about scales, the kinds of scales that there are, and that there are basically three kinds, what they are, how they are used in music, because a lot of music is scale work. Now there are three major types of scales, and the first type we're going to deal with, the diatonic scale. A diatonic scale is just notes one following another, up and back down again. It's just a series of notes, but it's step by step by step by step. And if you look at the whiteboard, you will see on the top of the whiteboard, I have two sets of scales. One begins with C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and that's this one. And this one starts with A, and the reason I did that is that A is the first letter of the alphabet. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then the A repeats the low note. An octave, as you know, is 8 notes. It's 7 notes, and the 8th note repeats the first note. So that is a diatonic scale. If I'm going to play it on a little keyboard, this is a little keyboard, and it'll be easy enough. You can go up and down the entire keyboard with that. Now on a piano, you can get 3 or 4 octaves. It's just notes up and notes down. You can start a scale on any note. For example, if I wanted to start on D instead of C, oops. You have to have 2 sharps if you have a key of D. If you play it in G, there's going to be 1 sharp. Just a series of notes, up and down. That's all a scale is. That is the diatonic scale. And if you practice piano, my twin sister is in the studio today watching this. If you're playing piano, you spend many hours just playing scales in different keys, but a lot of music is based on scale work. And so this is what is called the diatonic scale. Another type of scale is going to be the chromatic scale. If you look at the second line, the second staff line, I have just written the chromatic scale up. It goes by half steps. So if I'm to play it on the piano, it would be like, one half step up, one half step down. When you go up, you sharpen. When you go down, you flatten. That is a chromatic scale, and we play a lot of chromatic scales in music. I don't know if you remember Lawrence Welk, who used to have a show on, a music show on. He closed all of his music, every concert he did, every show he did, with a chromatic scale. And then he would do that every time. I never could understand why, but that's what he did. It was kind of like a trademark. That was a chromatic scale that he did. Now I'm going to turn this off. There is a third kind of scale that we rarely hear, and that's the Indian scale. I'm going to introduce you now to an instrument, a new instrument. I've never had it here before. This is a Lakota Indian flute. It's an actual flute made by the Lakota Indian tribes. You'll notice that it has this little device here that's considered to be a bird symbol, and the place where it's put determines what the pitch and the tone is. It is tied together with leather. It's knotted a little bit in the back, and you have the leather tendrils. And you have to be careful when you play it, because you can get your hand caught up in those tendrils and kind of be difficult to play. I'm going to play a scale on it. It's going to be like a scale you've never heard before. It's not anything like the scales that we play in our traditional Western music, but let me give it a go. And it has a beautiful, deep, haunting tones that the Indian flutes always have. It is very nice, isn't it? I think it's made out of cedar. It's a very beautiful instrument, but that's not a traditional scale, but it's the scale that the Indians base their music on, and they hand carve these wonderful flutes. They're haunting, they're soft. It's very difficult to find any traditional music that you can play them with because it's not a traditional scale. I found a couple of pieces that I can use that it will match with, but it's not an easy thing to do. I have one more Indian flute that I'm very proud of that I want to show you. This is an Indian flute that my brother-in-law made me. He hand-carved this, and it's made out of butternut wood. And instead of the little bird symbol, he created this little Indian design, and he's put it on here and tied it with string. And the tones, if I have this in the right position, the tones are exactly going to match the tones of the Lakota flute. A little softer, but the tones do match. Now, my brother-in-law's name is Howard Pelletier, and he is practically a genius at hand carving. He hand carves wonderful things, and this is a flute that he made for me that he hand carved, and I'm really quite proud of it. It's a very, very nice instrument. He got it so it matches perfectly the tones of the actual Lakota Indian flute, and there it is. Okay, now, why do we need so many different scales? Well, it depends upon what you want to play. Now, I was in Jordan, or close, I was in the Middle East, and I was I was on the West Bank, very close to Jordan, and I went to a church service, and it was filled with people who were Arabic. They were Christians and they were Arabic. And it was so interesting to see it because they sang, and their songs were different than the kind of traditional Western music we have. And of course, we couldn't understand the language at all because they were speaking an Arabic language. The pastor was an Israeli, and he was a missionary Christian, and his wife was an American. She went over to Israel as a missionary, met him, they fell in love and got married. She became an Israeli citizen. So you have a Jewish pastor, an American-born wife of the Jewish pastor, leading a church that's filled with Arabic Christians. And I thought, isn't this so wonderful that you can have such harmony and distinctness in churches all over the world? And as I was sitting there, the music that they had looked like a small newspaper. They weren't like books. They were more like magazines. You'd open it up, and there would be a wide range of notes and so forth. And a lady, Arabic lady sitting in front of me, turned around and said, "Welcome." She said, "You won't understand this music very well. It's going to be a lot different than what you usually play or what you usually sing. Would you like to have me come and join you and explain the music as we sing it?" And she said that in perfect English. And so naturally we were happy about that, and we welcomed her, and she came back and she said, "No, this is what we're doing now, and this is what we're doing now, and this is what this key means, and this is what these measures are." And it was just a totally delightful experience. So I think we need to open ourselves up to the fact that there are all kinds of different types of music, all legitimate, all beautiful, and all representing the cultures that people live in and how they express themselves. You know, truly, if you are a Christian, you have brothers and sisters all over the world, and that was shown to me that day, and it was just a wonderful experience. Well, what I want to go into now, those are the three kinds of scales that you have. Now, when I teach, I oftentimes use a piano. And the reason I do that is that there's no way that you can represent how notes are related to one another unless you use a keyboard to do it. You could do it on a glockenspiel or some other instruments where the notes are laid out, or you can do it on a melodica. So here I have one of my melodicas. I brought it in before. If I'm talking about chords or sharps and flats, I can play them. if I show a person a keyboard or a piano, I can say, this is a flat, this is a sharp, these are how the scales run, and it's harder to see notes relationally on woodwinds, but if you use a keyboard, you can do it as an example. For example, well, let me show you one more piano first. This is one you may not have seen. Yes, this is a piano. Yes, it does roll up. Handy for traveling. Stick it in your hip pocket, stick it in a purse, and just carry it. It's a piano. It's called a roll-up piano. And when you play it, you have to have a board or something that's stiff and hard that you can just put it on. So I took some foam board and covered it with contact paper, and I can lay it right out in front of me and play it. At least I could if it worked. The problem with these instruments, and I have two of them, is that they don't last very long. The keys do not depress. They're all electronic, so you have to push down, which sometimes can bother your shoulders and back, and then the tone will occur, and they have various settings and volume settings and so forth. And it's a very handy, nice sounding instrument, but as I said before, they don't last. When you play them a certain amount of time, a few months, a few weeks, suddenly they're gone. There's no more sound. And that happened to this one, and I have another one. I just brought it to show you. Once in a while you'll still see them sold, but I haven't seen them sold lately. I think it's because you have to keep buying them all the time. And they are fairly expensive, and they went up, you know, they're expensive to buy. But if you're playing a woodwind instrument, it is hard to see relationally what the notes are. Now I have my flute. Here is a B. Here's a C. Here's a C sharp. C sharp is interesting because you don't use any keys at all. You have your instrument up next to your mouth, and you're supporting it with your left hand and supporting it with the pinky finger down there just to balance it off. But look, no fingers to play the notes. So how would I show a person what is C sharp in relation to other notes? How can I tell you if a B, and I flat that B by pressing this here, now, what does that mean? How are you going to conceptualize the fact that that B flat is really next to that B? I'm playing a B here, I'm playing a B flat here, and the B flat is several notes down from the B. So how do I show that the B flat is next to the B? Well, you can see it if you look at on a piece of paper with the notes on it, or, whoops, an easier way, of course, would be to show it on the keyboard. Turn this back on again. Here is your B. Here's your B flat. They're right beside each other. Now, a scale can start on any note, and so, but you see it. You can see flats, you can see sharps, you can see chords. Let me do this again. A chord is going to be at least 3 notes or more. This one only plays 2 notes at a time, so therefore I'll do it on this melodica again. That's why I brought it. This one is a very tiny piano. It can only play 2 notes at a time. But if you're doing a chord, major chord, minor chord, you can see the relationship of the notes. You can see how the chords are built. You can see how the keys are. A key of C, a key of D, E flat. The key of E flat has 3 flats to it. You can see all of that laid out on a keyboard. You can't do that with a woodwind instrument. It's just hard to do, and I'm not sure that you can do it on the brass. One more thing I want to show you that makes instruments challenging. Here's the old silver clarinet that I had in here last time. I brought it. I had so many instruments to carry that I just took this. When you play a scale, I can't play it because right now, before it's repaired, it's not playable, but I can show you. B, A, G, F, E, D. We've gone over those notes before. This would be the C, and this would be a B. So on a piano, you have one finger, one note, and that makes it handy. On a woodwind instrument, you might actually have to use all your fingers except for the thumb, 9 fingers to play one note. Now, I had the saxophone in here, and I showed you that there were 5 ways to play a B flat. On this instrument, we have something that's called crossing the break. The clarinets run into this. When you get to the lowest note, and that on the high register, and you want to go to the low register, you switch from this to this, only this note. And when you go from the low register to the high register, or the high register to the low register, it's called crossing the break. And it's not so easy to do. And if you're teaching clarinet students, it's like a major celebration when they get so they can do it, because the tension of the mouth changes, the amount of air that you put into the instrument changes. On the clarinet, you have to learn 2 separate fingerings, one for the higher register, one for the lower register. So if I was going from that B, which is a high register, to the low register, this note, or if I'm doing it the opposite, I've got this A, and I want to switch to another register, which means putting all the fingers down. I mean, that's quite a transition. If you're learning clarinet, that is quite a transition. So going from one register to the other register is crossing the break. It is no difficulty for the flute or the saxophone when you just press either the register key or the octave key. If I'm going to do like a G to a high G, now I've played 3 Gs, jumping 2 registers to play them. It's no trouble at all. I may change the amount of air I put in, a fingering or 2 might change, but it's no big deal. It's not like the clarinet where you have a whole set of fingerings that are different, and your tension of your mouth changes and the amount of air that you put in it. So it's quite a challenge sometimes to play some of these instruments. And so a keyboard will show all of these relationships with the notes so clearly and so easily that when I teach, I would prefer to have access to a keyboard or access to some kind of a melodica or something. I haven't played this one for you yet today. This is a melodica, and you can see it does have that piano look to it. You have your white keys and you have your dark keys. And you can play chords with it and so forth. You can see all of that. You can see it in the music. You can see it in the keyboard instruments. Where you can't really truly see it is on the woodwinds if you're playing woodwinds. So you have to show it to a student on a keyboard for them to be able to see what the relationship is. Now, there are some people who feel, I don't agree with this, by the way, but there are some people who feel that you should have piano lessons before you take any other instrument. I had 3 years of piano lessons before I started woodwinds, and some parents insist that their children play piano before they play any other instrument, because then they can see the relationship to the notes, and it does give them a background to the notes. I myself don't agree with that. It's a little bit like saying you can't be a cardiologist unless you are a specialist in brain surgery first. I mean, if a child wants to play an instrument, don't force them to play another instrument first, because they're just going to get discouraged and they're going to say, I'm not going to bother with this. It's not worth my time. I would let a child play the instrument that they want to play, but have access to the keyboard so you can show them the relationship between the notes that they need to have. And then when they understand that, I mean, you can play it for them. They can see it. They don't have to be expert in a keyboard in order to understand that. All you have to do is show it to them, and then they'll know. And they can pick up some pointers on a piano as well. It's not too hard to show on a recorder because the notes are one right after the other. And where the notes are so close together, it's easier to show the relationships. It's not so hard on the flute either. But when you get to the woodwinds, when you're using like 6 and 7 fingers to play one note, and then you switch to another note, which may be another 4 or 5 fingers, well, that's harder to do. It's harder to see it. And I believe that music is partly visual and that it's good to see it. Now, you can play a scale on anything. It's going to sound different depending upon what key it is. This is in the key of F. One scale. It's an F scale. Here's a G. Sounds altogether different. It is a major scale for that instrument because the instrument is keyed differently. It's going to sound differently. If I take a C instrument, which would be the same as the recorder, they all have their scales. They sound different because they're in a different key. And that's an easy thing, too, that you can show them on a keyboard. Here's D, here's C, here's G. They have different sharps, they have different flats, and you can actually see the relation between the notes, you know. So I think probably we should close here, and I'm glad you watched. Hope you enjoy it, and please join me next time when I'm going to talk about arranging music and how to do that.